The text message that destroyed my marriage was only 7 words long. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. What made it even worse? It was from my best friend, Riley, and it was on my husband's phone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to the moment when I still believed my life was everything I'd ever wanted. My name is Madison, I'm 32 years old, and until that Tuesday in March, I thought I was living the American dream in Millbrook, Tennessee. Picture this, a 3-bedroom ranch house on Maple Street with a front porch where neighbors still wave when they drive by. Brandon and I had been married 8 years with 2 beautiful kids, Emma, who just turned 7, and Tyler, our energetic 5-year-old who never stops asking why about everything. I taught 2nd grade at the local elementary school, Brandon worked as an insurance adjuster, and we'd settled into that comfortable rhythm that married couples with young kids know so well. Soccer practice on Tuesdays, church on Sundays, and date nights maybe once a month when my mom could watch the kids. Riley had been my best friend since college, Emma's godmother, Tyler's favorite Aunt Riley, and the person I called when I needed to laugh about elementary school drama or vent about Brandon leaving his coffee cup on the counter every single morning. Every Wednesday, we'd meet at Sunrise Cafe downtown for our weekly catch-up. She'd tell me about her latest dating disasters, I'd share funny stories about my students, and we'd plan weekend activities that included both our families. Riley and Brandon got along great, which made everything so much easier. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. Brandon's phone, which used to sit casually on the kitchen counter, was suddenly always in his pocket. Riley seemed distracted during our coffee dates, checking her messages constantly. Brandon started working late more often, and when I'd ask about his day, his answers got shorter, less detailed. I told myself I was being paranoid. Marriage after 8 years isn't supposed to feel like a romance novel. People get busy. Life gets routine. That Tuesday morning, I was doing laundry in our bedroom when Brandon's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He was in the shower, and normally I wouldn't even glance at his messages. But when I saw Riley's name with that message preview, everything I thought I knew about my perfect little life was about to crumble. My hands were shaking as I picked up that phone, and in that moment, the trusting wife and grateful friend I'd always been was about to disappear forever. The message preview on Brandon's phone screen read, "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. When can we?" And then it cut off. But I'd already seen enough to make my world tilt sideways. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was spam. Perhaps someone had hacked Riley's phone. There may have been some innocent explanation that would have made this all make sense. But when I unlocked Brandon's phone, he'd never changed the passcode from our anniversary date, and scrolled through their message thread, denial became impossible. 3 months of messages. 3 months of, "I miss you," when Madison takes the kids to her mom's house, and "we have to be more careful." Photos I couldn't bear to look at for more than a second. Plans coordinated around my teaching schedule, my Wednesday coffee dates, and my weekend trips to visit family. I sat on the edge of our bed, still holding Brandon's phone, reading message after message that proved my husband and my best friend had been living secret lives right under my nose. The shower was still running in our bathroom, and I could hear Tyler downstairs watching cartoons, completely oblivious to the fact that his world was about to explode. The worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was how calculated it all was. Riley asks about my schedule during our coffee dates. Brandon volunteered to handle pickup from school on days when Riley was working late. The way they'd both been so supportive when I'd mentioned feeling overwhelmed with work, suggesting I take more time for myself and go visit my sister in Memphis for a weekend. They'd been orchestrating opportunities to be together, and I was grateful for their thoughtfulness. One message from 2 weeks ago made me physically nauseous. Riley writing, "She's so trusting. Sometimes I feel terrible, but then I remember how happy you make me." Brandon's response, "Don't overthink it. Madison is content with her little teaching world. She doesn't need to know about us." My little teaching world? Like my career, my passion for helping children learn and grow, was some quaint hobby that kept me safely distracted while they built their real relationship behind my back. I heard the shower turn off and knew I had maybe 3 minutes before Brandon came out of the bathroom. 3 minutes to decide how to handle the worst betrayal of my life. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely put his phone back where I'd found it. Emma appeared in the doorway, backpack over her shoulder, ready for school. "Mama, are you okay? You look funny." "I'm fine, sweetheart," I managed, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "Go finish your breakfast. Daddy will drive you to school today." As I heard Brandon moving around in the bathroom, humming some song like he didn't have a care in the world, I realized that the woman who'd picked up that phone 5 minutes ago, the trusting wife, the grateful friend, the woman who believed in the goodness of the people she loved, was gone forever. The question now was, who was I going to become instead? I spent the entire day in a fog, going through the motions of teaching 23 second graders while my mind replayed every message I'd read that morning. During lunch, I sat in my empty classroom staring at my phone, Riley's number in my contacts. How do you confront your best friend about sleeping with your husband? What words exist for that kind of betrayal? By the time I picked up the kids from after-school care, I'd made my decision. No dramatic confrontations with Riley, no public scenes. I would handle this with Brandon first, privately, like adults. Maybe there was still a chance to save something from the wreckage of my marriage. Emma and Tyler chattered about their day while I made dinner with shaking hands. Spaghetti and meatballs, Brandon's favorite. The irony wasn't lost on me, preparing a comfort meal for the man who'd been systematically destroying our family behind my back. Brandon walked through the door at 6:30, same as always. Kissed my cheek, ruffled Tyler's hair, asked Emma about her math test. The perfect father and husband if you didn't know about the secret phone messages and Nashville hotel rooms. "How was work?" I asked, setting his plate down with more force than necessary. "Oh, you know, same old insurance drama. Had to drive out to assess a claim in Franklin. Took longer than expected." He said it so easily, so naturally, that I almost believed him, despite the evidence burning a hole in my memory. We ate dinner, we helped with homework, we gave the kids their baths and read bedtime stories. The entire time, I felt like I was watching our life from outside my body, seeing our family routine for what it might be, the last normal evening we'd ever have. After Emma and Tyler were asleep, I found Brandon in the living room, scrolling through his phone, probably checking messages from Riley. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. He looked up with that distracted expression I'd grown so familiar with lately. "What's up, babe?" "I saw the messages, Brandon. From Riley. I know about the affair." The color drained from his face, but he didn't immediately deny it. That silence told me everything I needed to know about how long this had been going on, how deep it went. "Madison, I can explain." "Explain what? Explain how you've been sleeping with my best friend for 3 months? Explain how you've been lying to me every single day? Explain how you used my work schedule and my trust to sneak around behind my back?" "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think." My voice cracked. 8 years of trust and love spilling out as raw pain. "I read the messages, Brandon. All of them. The hotels, the planning around my schedule, the jokes about my little teaching world. Don't you dare try to minimize this." He stood up, ran his hands through his hair,
a gesture that used to seem endearing and now just looked pathetic. Madison, please. Riley and I, it's complicated. We have history. History? You mean you've been cheating on me before? No, not since we've been married, but Riley and I, we dated in college, before I met you. There were always feelings there that we never fully resolved. The casual way he said it, like resolving feelings with an ex somehow justified destroying our marriage, made me want to throw something at his head. So you decided to resolve them now, while married to me, while we have 2 children who call her Aunt Riley? I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. For months. And you both made the conscious choice to keep lying to me, to keep using me, to keep pretending to be my friend and my husband while you built a relationship behind my back. Brandon's face shifted from guilt to frustration. What do you want me to say, Madison? That I'm sorry? I am sorry. But maybe this happened because we've grown apart. Maybe we got married too young, settled down too fast. Maybe we both deserve to be with people who really understand us. And there it was. Not just the affair, but the blame. Somehow this was my fault for not being the right person for him. I walked to our bedroom and pulled out my suitcase. Brandon followed, panic finally replacing his defensive anger. What are you doing? I'm leaving, tonight, with the kids. Madison, don't be dramatic. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. No, Brandon, we can't work this out. You don't get to cheat on me with my best friend and then ask for couples therapy. You don't get to blame me for your choices and then expect me to fight for a marriage you've already ended. I packed everything I could fit in 2 suitcases while Brandon stood in the doorway making promises he should have made months ago. I woke up Emma and Tyler, told them we were going on a surprise adventure to Grandma's house, and carried them to the car in their pajamas. As I backed out of our driveway at 11 p.m., Brandon stood on the front porch looking lost and confused, like he genuinely couldn't understand how his actions had led to this moment. But I wasn't looking at Brandon anymore. I was driving toward an uncertain future with my sleeping children in the back seat, finally free from the lies that had been poisoning our home for months. I made it about 15 miles before I had to pull over. Not because the car broke down, but because I couldn't stop crying long enough to see the road clearly. Emma and Tyler were still asleep in the back seat, and I was sitting in the parking lot of a 24-hour gas station at midnight, completely falling apart. The fluorescent lights felt harsh against my tear-swollen face, and I realized I had no real plan beyond get away from Brandon. My mom's house was 3 hours away, but showing up at 3 a.m. with 2 confused children seemed cruel to everyone involved. I had maybe $200 in cash, 1 credit card that Brandon could track, and absolutely no idea what to do next. That's when someone tapped gently on my driver's side window. I looked up to see a man about my age, wearing a gas station uniform shirt with coal embroidered above the pocket. He had kind eyes and was holding a box of tissues, which somehow made me cry even harder. I rolled down the window partway, suddenly aware that I probably looked like a complete mess. Ma'am, I don't mean to intrude, but I've been watching you for about 10 minutes, and you seem like you might need some help. Are you okay? Are the kids okay? There was something about his voice, gentle, genuinely concerned, not creepy or pushy, that made me trust him immediately. I'm fine. Then I immediately contradicted myself. Actually, no, I'm really not fine at all. You want to come inside? I've got coffee that's actually decent, and it's warmer than sitting out here. The kids can stretch out on the couch in my office if they need to. I hesitated. Everything I'd been taught about stranger danger warred with the desperate need to be somewhere safe, somewhere that wasn't my car in a parking lot. I'm Cole Matthews, he said, as if reading my mind about safety. I own this place, been here 8 years, and I promise I'm not a serial killer, just someone who recognizes when a person's having the worst night of their life. Something about the way he said it, like he'd been there himself, made me turn off the engine. Cole helped me carry Tyler inside without waking him, then brought Emma, who mumbled sleepily about wanting her daddy, before settling back into sleep on the small couch in his office. He poured me coffee in a real mug, not a paper cup, and sat across from me at a small table surrounded by invoices and delivery schedules. "I don't usually tell my problems to strangers," I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "Tonight's probably not a usual kind of night for you." And somehow, sitting in that cluttered office that smelled like coffee and motor oil, I found myself telling Cole everything. The messages, the affair, the confrontation, the way Brandon had tried to make it my fault. Cole listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or asking gentle questions, never once making me feel stupid or dramatic. "My ex-wife cheated too," he said quietly when I finished. "Different circumstances, but that feeling like your whole world just got rearranged without your permission, I remember that." "What did you do?" "Made a lot of mistakes initially. Tried to win her back, tried to fix things that weren't mine to fix. Eventually learned that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you looks like the worst thing, at least at first." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching my kids sleep and listening to the occasional customer come in for late-night snacks or cigarettes. "I don't suppose you know anywhere cheap to stay around here, just until I figure out what comes next." Cole was quiet for a long moment, then said, "There's a small apartment upstairs. The previous tenant moved out last month, and I haven't found anyone to replace him yet. It's nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, but it's clean and safe. You and the kids could stay there temporarily if you want. No rent until you get back on your feet." I stared at him. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Because sometimes we all need someone to catch us when we fall. And because I've got a feeling you're the kind of person who'll do the same for someone else when you're back on solid ground." Looking at this man I'd known for less than 2 hours, who was offering me shelter when my best friend had betrayed me and my husband had destroyed our family, I realized something important. There were still good people in the world. People who helped without expecting anything in return. "Okay," I said, surprising myself with how sure I sounded. "Yes, thank you." For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. 3 days into our new life above Cole's gas station, I was starting to feel almost human again. Emma and Tyler had adopted with the resilience that only children possess, treating our tiny apartment like an adventure. Emma helped me unpack our few belongings, while Tyler made friends with Cole's elderly tabby cat, Biscuit, who seemed to appear whenever we needed comfort most. I'd called in sick to work, knowing I needed time to process everything before facing my coworkers' questions. Brandon had been texting and calling non-stop, alternating between apologies and demands that I come home so we can work this out like adults. I'd stopped reading his messages after the 5th one that blamed our problems on my overreaction. But it was Brandon's mother, Carol, who provided the missing piece of the puzzle I hadn't even known I was solving. She called on Thursday afternoon while the kids were napping. Carol had always been kind to me, but we weren't particularly close. She was reserved, polite, the type of Southern woman who expressed affection through casseroles rather than conversation. "Madison, honey, I heard about the situation. I wanted you to know how sorry I am, and I think there are some things you need to understand about Brandon and Riley." "Mrs. Matthews, you don't need to—" "Yes, I do. Because this isn't just about an affair, sweetie. This goes back much further than you realize." What Carol told me next reframed everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my friendship, and the last 8 years of my life. Brandon and Riley hadn't just dated in college, they'd been engaged. For 2 years, they'd planned a future together, talking about careers and children and growing old in the same small town where they'd both grown up. Riley had been the love of Brandon's young life, and he'd been hers. "So what happened?" I asked, though part of me already dreaded the answer. "I happened," Carol said quietly. "Riley came from a different background than we did. Her family didn't have money, didn't have connections. When Brandon talked about proposing, his father and we discouraged it strongly. We thought he could do better, marry someone more suitable for his prospects. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Someone like me. You were everything we wanted for Brandon. College educated, from a good family, stable career. When you two started dating 6 months after he and Riley broke up, we were thrilled. We thought he'd moved on, found someone better suited for him. I sat on Cole's donated couch, watching my children sleep peacefully, while learning that my entire marriage had been built on other people's manipulations and my own ignorance. Did Brandon love me? I asked, the question scraping my throat raw. He did, honey. He does. But first love, that's something different. Something that never fully goes away, especially when it ends because of outside pressure rather than natural incompatibility. And Riley, did she know Brandon was engaged to someone else when we became friends? The silence stretched long enough that I had my answer. Riley knew you were dating Brandon when she approached you that first day in graduate school orientation. She knew who you were, knew about your relationship, and decided to become your friend anyway. 8 years of friendship. 8 years of coffee dates and birthday celebrations and shared secrets. 8 years of Riley playing godmother to my children while secretly harboring feelings for my husband. 8 years of me unknowingly standing in the way of what 2 other people considered their real relationship. I felt manipulated, yes, but also strangely relieved. This wasn't about my inadequacies as a wife or friend. This was about unfinished business that predated my involvement in either of their lives. I had never been the problem. I had been the solution to a problem other people created. Why are you telling me this now? I asked Carol. Because you deserve to know the truth. And because she broke slightly. Because I'm partly responsible for this mess. If we hadn't interfered with Brandon and Riley's relationship all those years ago, none of this would have happened. You wouldn't be hurt, those beautiful grandchildren wouldn't be confused, and everyone could have just lived their authentic lives from the beginning. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering dusk, watching the lights come on at Cole's gas station below. Emma stirred on the couch beside me, and I smoothed her hair back from her forehead, thinking about the complicated legacy of choices that other people make for us. Brandon and Riley belonged together. They always had. The tragedy wasn't that they'd found their way back to each other. The tragedy was that it took 8 years, 2 children, and the destruction of multiple relationships for everyone to acknowledge what had been true all along. But here's what I realized sitting in that small apartment. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. 3 months later, life had settled into a rhythm I never could have imagined that night I fled my house with 2 sleeping children. Emma and Tyler were thriving in ways that surprised me. Emma had made friends with the daughter of Cole's morning shift employee, and Tyler had appointed himself official greeter for gas station customers, charming truckers and commuters alike with his endless questions about their vehicles. I'd found work at Millbrook Elementary's sister school across town, teaching 3rd grade this time. The principal, Mrs. Henderson, had been understanding about my situation when I'd explained during the interview that I needed a fresh start. Small towns talk, but they also take care of their own, and somehow I'd become part of this community in a way I'd never quite managed in my old neighborhood. Cole had become our anchor, without either of us really discussing it. He'd fixed Emma's bicycle when the chain came off, taught Tyler how to check tire pressure, and somehow always appeared with fresh groceries when he noticed our supplies running low. Never intrusive, never presumptuous, just quietly present in the way that good people are when they care about your welfare. You don't have to keep taking care of us, I told him one evening, as we watched the kids play with Biscuit in the small yard behind the station. "I'm not taking care of you," he said, handing me a cup of coffee. "I'm enjoying your company. There's a difference." The divorce proceedings had been surprisingly straightforward. Brandon wanted joint custody, which I agreed to, and he didn't fight me on keeping the house sale proceeds when I insisted on selling it. Riley had apparently moved in with him within a month of my leaving, which confirmed everything Carol had told me about their long history. "Do you hate them?" Emma asked one Saturday morning as we drove past our old neighborhood on the way to her soccer game. She'd been asking harder questions lately, processing the changes in her 7-year-old way. "I don't hate them, sweetheart. I think they were confused about what they wanted, and they handled it badly, but that doesn't make them terrible people. It just makes them human." "Do you sad we don't live in our old house anymore?" I looked in the rearview mirror at my daughter, so serious and thoughtful, and realized I could answer honestly. "No, Emma, I'm not sad about that at all." And I wasn't. The apartment above Cole's station had become home in a way our carefully decorated ranch house never quite had. Here, I woke up each morning knowing exactly who I was and what I wanted. Here, my children saw their mother as strong and capable, rather than quietly accommodating. Here, I'd learned the difference between being needed and being valued. Cole and I had been dancing around something for weeks. Long conversations after the kids went to bed, shared meals that felt like dates but weren't officially called that, moments of connection that neither of us had rushed to define. "Madison," he said one evening as we cleaned up after dinner, "I want you to know that whatever this is between us, it's not about you needing a place to stay or me wanting to rescue someone. It's about genuinely enjoying who you are and wanting to know you better." I looked at this man who had appeared at my lowest moment and somehow made everything better without trying to fix me, and I realized I was ready to trust again. Not blindly this time, but with the wisdom that comes from understanding the difference between someone who sees you as convenient and someone who sees you as worthwhile. "I'd like that too," I said, and meant it completely.
6 months after that terrible Tuesday night when I discovered Brandon's affair, I was sitting in a lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers. Brandon sat across from me, looking older and somehow smaller than the man I'd married. Riley waited in the hallway, probably checking her phone, still unable to meet my eyes during custody exchanges. The strangest thing about that moment was how little I felt. No anger, no sadness, just a quiet sense of completion. Like finishing a book that had been good in parts, but ultimately wasn't the story I wanted to keep reading. "You look happy," Brandon said as we walked out of the courthouse together. "I am happy," I said, and realized it was true in a way I hadn't been for years, maybe even before the affair. "I'm sorry, Madison, for all of it, for lying, for the way it happened, for hurting you and the kids. I know you are. And I forgive you, Brandon, not because what you did was okay, but because carrying anger around would only hurt me." He nodded, looking like he wanted to say more, but not knowing how. "The kids seem to really like Cole." "They do, and he likes them. Are you two?" "We're taking things slow, building something real instead of rushing into something convenient. Cole and I had been officially dating for 2 months, though it felt like we'd been moving toward each other since that first night at the gas station. He was patient with my children, respectful of my boundaries, and honest about his own past mistakes. Most importantly, he saw me as a complete person, not as someone who needed to be rescued or fixed. Emma and Tyler had adjusted to our new life with the adaptability that children possess when they feel secure and loved. They spent alternate weekends with Brandon and Riley, who seemed to be trying to create the family they'd always imagined. The kids came back from those visits with stories about movie nights and trips to the park,
and I was genuinely glad they were building positive relationships with their father and their partner. "Do you think Daddy and Aunt Riley will get married?" Tyler asked one evening as I tucked him into bed. "Maybe, sweetie. Would that be okay with you?" He considered this with 5-year-old seriousness. "I guess so, but I like our home better. Cole taught me how to change oil, and Biscuit sleeps on my bed, and you smile more here." Out of the mouths of babes. The most important lesson I learned wasn't about betrayal or forgiveness or even love. It was about self-respect. For years, I'd defined myself through other people's needs. Brandon's comfort, Riley's friendship, my students' success, my children's happiness. I'd been so busy being what everyone else needed that I'd forgotten to ask myself what I wanted. Now I knew. I wanted honest conversations and shared laughter. I wanted a partner who chose me deliberately rather than settling for me conveniently. I wanted my children to see their mother as someone who valued herself enough to walk away from situations that diminished her worth. I wanted a life built on truth rather than comfortable lies. That evening, as Cole helped Tyler with homework while Emma read to Biscuit, and I prepared dinner in our tiny kitchen, I looked around at our imperfect, cramped, wonderful life and felt something I'd been missing for years. Contentment. Not the settling kind, but the earned kind that comes from making hard choices and discovering you're stronger than you ever imagined. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the thing that saves you. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted helps you find everything you actually need. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you meet someone at a gas station at midnight who reminds you that there are still good people in the world. People who help without expecting anything in return, who see your worth when you've forgotten it yourself, and are willing to build something real with you, one honest conversation at a time. Brandon and Riley got their second chance at first love, but I got something better. I got my first chance at loving myself enough to choose wisely. And that, I realized, was worth everything.